Celtics and Heat. Celtics are looking for a W tonight in Miami. The Heat are a 3-point favorite. Total here is 207. That's climbed up a little bit from game one. That total was 203.5. Miami took that game one. They won by 11 thanks to 41 points by Jimmy Butler. Chris, we all played the under, as I mentioned, 203.5 in game one, and we all lost that. So do you have any looks today on overs, whether it's the game over or maybe a first half over?
I do. How'd you know that, Kate? I'm
I
looking
don't
at
know. It's just really smart.
I'm looking at quite a few overs in this one, and the main reason that is because of the Boston Celtics. We saw how they started the series against the Nets. That was a very contentious game. That's a team they know very well, but it came down to the last second. They won ultimately, but that was a really hard-fought game. They turned around and they obviously won the next three games, right? They swept them. Against the Bucks, they start off with that loss. They come back in the next series in the second game, and they start off really hot, especially in the first half. The Bucks are just one of those, or I'm sorry, the Celtics to me are just one of those teams who, even though they're so good, they're so talented, I do think that they're the better team in this series. They still are young, right? So they're just in these really big spots now. They haven't had as much NBA experience as a lot of the players on the Miami Heat. You think about a PJ Tucker, for example, who was in the finals. He's a champion now. Last year, players like that. Jimmy Butler has been before. So I just expect the Celtics to settle in a little bit more tonight. I got to say, for all of our listeners and probably everybody across the world who bets NBA, it is so frustrating to try to keep track of these injuries. In the regular season, that's one thing. When it's the same thing going on in the playoffs, it's like, man, oh, man. So I guess Al Horford didn't really have COVID or something. Looks like he's playing tonight. That's a good thing for the Celtics. It's a really good thing that Marcus Smart is playing too. But historically, we look at that matchup between Marcus Smart and Jimmy Butler in particular. Jimmy Butler has no problem when Smart is facing him on defense. And in fact, Butler is averaging in the last 5 games against the Celtics team, he's averaging 52% from the floor. And somebody found a stat out there. We have to verify it, so I don't know. But I think it's an even better percentage against Marcus Smart. Is Marcus Smart going to cover in the whole game? Probably not. But I think, from evidenced by last game, we saw that Miami was happy to go with the flow and the rhythm of the Celtics. The Celtics brought it hard from the very start. I think they're going to do that again today. I expect some really good offensive adjustments from them. And now that they have their whole team back, they can do a lot. Derrick White not being in today, I guess he just had a baby, right? That just popped up on Twitter.
Yeah.
So congrats to him, but I don't think that makes a huge difference in the Celtics game plan or in their offense. He's a good player. He's not a great player. But this game, I don't want to pick the Celtics overall because the Heat at home, when they gain energy, they can be fantastic. But the thing about the Heat is they're such an off and on team. They can be so hot and so cold. So I'm going to go with the Celtics early over 24.5 in the first, for the first half to be driven up by a lot of offense in the first half. I expect this pace to kind of keep up. I think it'll calm down as the season goes on, or as the series goes on.
All right, I like that. Mitch has taken the third quarter money line for the Heat. That's his only bet. So first quarter, first half, third quarter, all around. I'm going to play Boston tonight, going against you, Chris, a little bit. You've not wanted to take the Celtics, but I'm going to play them tonight. That game one, they were coming off of a 7-game. What are you looking at me for?
You're not going against me. I'm playing on Celtics overs.
You just said that you don't want to play Boston tonight because you're scared of the Heat. I'm saying I'm going to go against that point and play the Celtics.
You just love going one-on-one with Farley bets. I get it. That's fine. You're still mad about the Suns. I know you are, Kate. But no, we're on the same page. I think the Celtics are going to score a lot tonight.
Okay. Well, yeah, clearly if the Celtics are going to score a lot, they're going to be the ones to dictate the pace of this game. And so if that's the case, then I like the Celtics even more tonight. Coming into that game one, they were coming off the series against the defending NBA champs. They won 7 games, 1 day of rest, travel spot, 2 starters announced out very last minute. Now Al Horford, Marcus Smart back in tonight. And talk about Marcus Smart maybe defending Jimmy Butler. Sure, fine. But Jimmy Butler offensively targeted Peyton Pritchard a ton in that game one. He was the pigeon for Miami, which is whatever player on the opposing team is the weakest defender pretty much is who you're going to target. And so Marcus Smart being back in the lineup means a lot less Peyton Pritchard minutes. So I think that will be obviously work in the Celtics' favor in order to have their defensive player of the year on the floor more often than Peyton Pritchard. He also went 30 for 34 from the free throw line in that game one. I don't think that's going to happen again. I mean, to take 34 free throws, that's kind of an absurd number. So that's out of the way. And the Celtics won every quarter outside of that third quarter. It was a miserable third quarter, and they ultimately lost the game because of that performance in the third quarter. But overall, they played really well in the first half, leading at half, and even in that fourth quarter. So I'm going to take the points with the Heat, with the Celtics tonight. Kind of wish I had gotten it where it opened, I believe, at 4.5. But we're at 3 now with Al Horford and Marcus Smart being in, and I'm going to grab it there. Josh, what's your play for tonight?
I love that you're on the Celtics, Kate. Shock horror, that's exactly where I'm leaning. But I haven't taken them in this game specifically. I'll probably take a series position before this game tips off, though, which is essentially correlated, assuming that they win. I think that's the best entry point is right now. And even if they lose, maybe I'll probably go back to that well anyway before game 3. But for this game specifically, I'm looking at the Miami Heat team total under. For a lot of what you guys have said in a way as well, and the first point being Marcus Smart being likely to be back, Al Horford already being back, means that you're going to get a Celtics team who is a little bit more aligned in how they're going to execute at both ends of the floor. And I think the fact that their offensive execution can go back to what it normally is will play a big part in improving their defense as well, because the amount of turnovers that we saw from the Boston team that led to transition opportunities for Miami, that led to either easy buckets in transition or fouls, which obviously led to free points anyway, was pretty alarming. And I think that's the one thing that Ime Udoka would have pointed out, that the sloppiness on offense is going to translate to offense for Miami. And eliminating those mistakes will likely be a lot easier when you have both Horford and Smart out on the floor, two guys who are very comfortable, very good with the ball in their hands, excellent playmakers themselves, and it puts a little bit less pressure on Jason Tatum to have to do everything outside of just scoring the basketball. And when you have him having to create and his usage numbers too high, that's traditionally when he does get sloppy with possession. And I think that's exactly what we saw, particularly in that third quarter, where he had a multitude of turnovers that essentially swung momentum in that game entirely. So Boston, like I said, getting their starters back, getting a more efficient offense is going to lead to a better defense for them. I'm not sure the pace will be quite as high as it was with those guys back in either. Like I said, when I made the adjustments to Smart and Horford being out, my projected total went up. So I'm assuming them being back as well will probably play back to what the initial projection was for me in game 1, which does give some value as well to the full game under. But like you said, we've seen Boston's offense in situations like this go off. And, if they do, maybe they do enough to carry that over the full game total themselves, given that it is still a relatively low number. But for me, I do think the Celtics ultimately are going to get it done. And like I said, I think that defensively, the things that they need to do are pretty minimal in order to stop Miami being as efficient and effective as what they were in game 1. So let's hope that transpires here. And if they can steal one on the road, I think we've officially got ourselves a series over in the Eastern Conference.
That we do. If they don't steal one on the road, Josh, you said you still might take Boston. Find a good series price there. Chris, do you think Boston still has a chance? I mean, do you still maybe?
Oh yeah. And I think that's what Josh is doing with this sneaky play by Josh, because all things could happen. All things could happen in his favor.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the Heat could technically still win this game, score under that amount of points, and then he could get the future. Wow. See, this is why
and
Josh
wins, then he's happy.
That's right. If the Celtics win, he's happy. He probably nails his bet anyway. So yeah, I am definitely looking at and that's why I'm hoping that the Heat win tonight, and why I don't want to kind of play on the Celtics, right? Because I would love to play on the Celtics down 0-2, going back home. We've seen the Celtics do that before. They're going to be much more confident, much more comfortable at home. A young team needs that to kind of get started sometimes, right? And to kind of get back in rhythm. I think this game's going to be a lot closer tonight, but I sure hope that the Heat win so that I could take advantage of that futures. Because, I mean, whether they win this series or not, at that point, the value is going to be terrific.
Yeah.
See, so we are going against each other. You want the Heat to win tonight. I want the Celtics.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
Make that clear. Is this a 7-game series?
I think if the Heat win tonight, it is. What do you think, Josh?
I had it I'm still going to stay with what I said pre-series, which was Boston in 6. They dropped game 1. I think they dropped game 5 as well. Those are the two that I think that they lose. I think they win tonight, hold home court, and then close it out on their home floor as well in game 6. So I'm going to stick with that until it's no longer mathematically possible, and then I'll reassess and let you know how many games Boston needs to win.
All right. Peyton Pritchard, yes, Peyton Pritchard's still going to play tonight. No Derrick White. He's having a baby, yep.
I think it comes down to the adjustment in rotations as well. So even when Derrick White moves into the starting lineup, his minutes and the staggered lineups aren't the same as when they are with Marcus Smart, because Ime Udoka obviously can trust Smart to run out there with a multitude of different guys, whereas with Derrick White, I don't think there's that level of trust yet. And so you have to essentially run him with the starters when he's with the starting unit, and that leaves a lot of holes in that second unit. And, we saw minutes out there where Aaron Naismith was partnered with Peyton Pritchard, and that was, obviously concerning. And I think those are the sort of things that we won't see this time around with Smart available.
Well, and just to be clear, though, Marcus Smart did get an MRI done, right? So, I mean, if there's a chance that, if they had an MRI done on him, they thought it could be fairly serious, that he was in a significant amount of pain, right? So there is a world where we don't see 100% Marcus Smart.
Yeah.
I think 75% Marcus Smart is still better than Peyton Pritchard 110%. But there is a world where maybe that he could expose that a little bit too if Marcus Smart is limping around or something.
Yeah, I think as well with the defensive adjustments, when you have Horford back and you have Horford with Rob Williams, the big thing there is being able to then run Rob Williams as just a free roaming help defender. And that makes a huge difference to Boston's defensive scheme. They're one of the few teams, I think Golden State probably the only other one that really does it with Draymond Green, where you have just a free roaming help defender in the paint who can come across and do what's necessary. And those are the two reasons why I think both Boston and Golden State kind of have the advantage in a series like this, because when you have that flexibility available to you, it makes scoring extremely difficult. And when you can rely on your defense to the manner that both those teams potentially can in these series, your offense kind of takes care of itself in a little way.
Yeah, we on our podcast last week, Kay and I were saying we need to talk more about Robert Williams III. I mean, that guy is like a super fit Zion, right?
Yeah.
Especially on defense. I mean, he's kind of a freak of nature, the way that he can move around at his size. So to have him back, and it looks like he's going to be back for game 2, and maybe he's healthy now, that's huge for the Boston defense.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Having the game under the belt as well is something that seems to have just been completely brushed aside, whereas, the reality is it's going to make a big difference, I think, for his game 2 effort. Not that he was bad in game 1 by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, the impact he could now have going forward, I think, is going to be notable.
You guys are making me love my Celtics +3 bet even more. Talking about all.
You know why, Kate? Because it's the right side.
Why aren't you taking it, Josh? You got to put it on your card.
Josh.
You're right. I'm gonna do what you guys did yesterday and just talk myself into it. And by tip off, I'll have that plus series plus team total under, and yeah,
everything.
We've
kind of got everything covered in this game. Chris is gonna take the overs for the Celtics, first half over, and the game over in the first half as well. I'm going to play the Celtics +3, and Josh is taking the Heat team total under 105.